Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this session, I'm going to talk about some important works which were appeared in the Anglo-Saxon age, the Old English period. So according to the nature of the works which were appeared in the Old English period, the works are divided into three types: heroic poetry, lyric poetry, and religious poetry. Now let's see heroic poetry first. See, in the age of Anglo-Saxon, in the Anglo-Saxon literature, which frequently talks about the theme of fights and hostilities, in which the nobility of a character was brought out through a display of courage, a loyalty to the Lord, and the community, and thirst for a glory. See, the most of the remarkable heroic poetries of this periods are Beowulf, Waldere, the Battle of Brunanburh, the fight at Finnsburg, the Battle of Maldon, and Widsith. So these are a few important works, heroic works, were appeared in the age of Anglo-Saxon. The first one is Beowulf. See, Beowulf, the poetry which has got about 3,182 lines. Okay. This poetry proclaims two major events in the life of a hero, the central character, Beowulf. The first one was happened when he was young. Beowulf had to fight with a monster. The monster name is Grendel. See, Grendel is a monster who always disturbing people, attacking people, and he was also the monster was doing a lot of atrocity in the city. The Danish king Hrothgar, who couldn't tolerate the atrocities done by Grendel monster. So there, the central character Beowulf, who had to fight against the Grendel. In the fight, in the battle, Grendel was killed. Grendel. He was killed by Beowulf. After that, Grendel's mother also was killed by Beowulf. The another event happens after 50 years. There, one dragon was doing a lot of troublings to the people of the country. The dragon has to be killed. There, Beowulf had to fight against the dragon, and the dragon was killed, and even the Beowulf also was wounded heavily in the fight. At the end, Beowulf also was died. The next poetry is Waldere. This poetry consists of two fragments, Wealdere. So this consists of two fragments. It has got about 63 lines. It has got about 63 lines, and this poetry tells some exploits of Walter of Aquitaine, and this work has vigor and power, and it's to be greatly regretted that little is preserved, only because only few lines are preserved of this work. But this is said to be the finest narrative pieces. This work, Waldere, is said to be the finest narrative piece. So the next poetry is the Battle of Brunanburh, Brunanburh. This poetry discusses about a battle which was occurred in 937 in the place called Brunanburh. Okay, this battle was happened between the English under Aethelstan. Aethelstan is a grandson of King Alfred, and Danes. So between Aethelstan and Anlaf and Dublin. Anlaf and Dublin, they got allied with Scots. Scots was led by Constantine and Welsh. So between these two groups, a battle was happened in 937, about which the poetry is being written. This poem celebrates the victory of Athelstan and his brother Edmund and rings with note of patriotism. But the poem has not been sobered by any clergyman, and this poetry is, ecstatically portrays the grotesque scenes of bloodshed and butchery. The next poetry is The Fight at Finnsburg, Finnsburh, Finnsburg. And this poetry, depicts the Anglo-Saxon feuds and the plight of women married to the enemies to assuage hostility. So here, the both side they have to lose their kinsmen. That will create outrage in later war. So that will make war again. And this poetry has got about 48 lines. 48 line fragment, which dealing with the part of a tragic story of Finn and Hilbert. See, this poetry was written in order to heal the long-standing enmity between the Danes and Frisians. The Danes and Frisians by the marriage of Frisians king Finn to Hilbert. See, this poetry was said to be an attempt to make the heal of long-standing enmity between the Danes and the Frisians by the marriage of Frisian king Finn to Hildebert. H-A-L-D-E-B-U-R-H. Hildebert is the sister of Hnef. H-N-A-E-F. Hnef. Hnef is the king of Danes. So to heal their long-standing rivalry, their long-standing enmity, the marriage was happened. The marriage was arranged, but unfortunately, even after the peace of even after the marriage, the enmity started again, which resulted in lot of mortalities, including death of Hildebert's son, brother and husband. The next poetry is The Battle of Maldon, Maldon. It's a story of defeat, but also it's a glory, as the defeat is outcome of the magnanimity of Beowulf. Beowulf is the one who allows his enemies, the invading Danes, to cross the river safely out of generosity before fight begins. But unfortunately, Beowulf was died, but still his fame remains as an embodiment of noble swordsmanship. And the second half of the poem is concerned with the fidelity of his followers, who remain determined to avenge their leader's death. The next poetry is Widsith, W-I-D-S-I-T-H. So Widsith. This poetry is also known as the Traveler's Song, and which has got about 143 lines. It survives only in the Exeter book. This poetry discusses about the most part of survey of the people and kings, heroes of the European country. See, almost all the Old English heroic poems are anonymous in nature. We don't know who wrote these poetries. The common theme among them is, power, valor, courageous, heroism. See, among these heroic poems, Beowulf is definitely the finest creation. Other poems also give us a glimpse of lifestyle of early ancestor of English race, but still Beowulf said to be the most finest creation. That's it about heroic poetry. Now let's look into the lyric poetry. So the lyric poetry takes its name from lyre. The lyric, the word which derived from lyre, L-Y-R-E. It's a stringed instrument which is played to accompany a song. Lyre was also used in Anglo-Saxon England. The singers of tales in Beowulf are likely to be used. The lyre was also used in Anglo-Saxon England. The singers of tales in Beowulf, they have used them. Next poetry in the lyric poetry, the Wanderer, W-A-N-D-R-E-R, Wanderer. This poetry was preserved only in an anthology known as Exeter Book, A-X-E-T-E-R, Exeter Book, and which came in late 10th century. This work came out in late 10th century, and this poetry has got about 115 lines of alliterative verse. This poetry proclaims a lonely wanderer wandering hopelessly, and equalizes his woes in posthumous period of his fallen lord. A characteristics of Anglo-Saxon period, the poem portrays themes of fraternity and loyalty, allegiance, and the tradition of warriors passing. And this man, the wanderer, the central character, who always advising people to solve any problem through words, because he doesn't want to encourage battle. The most the most significant reason is why he is not encouraging battle, because he lost most of his close relatives in the war, in a battle, and he has seen a lot of bloodshed, so he doesn't want it to appear again. The next poetry is the Seafarer. So the Seafarer, which gives a first person account of man alone on the sea. It was written in the first person narrative. The poem consists of 124 lines, which was followed by a single word called Amen. This came out in 10th century. It's an elegy. This poetry is an elegy, and an old man called the elderly man seafarer, the elderly seafarer who thinks about his past life, which he spent with his fellow worker, his friends, and he also describes the hardships of life on the sea, the beauty of nature, and the glory of God. The sea imagery recedes. The seafarer speaks entirely of God, heaven, and the soul. The American modern writer Ezra Pound translated the first 99 lines of the Seafarer in America, and she made it popular, and she published in 1911 and made it popular in New Age. The next poetry in lyric poetry is the wife's lament or the wife's complaint. This poetry consists of 53 lines. This poetry also treated as an elegy. This poetry deals with a woman narrator. There is a woman, she's the narrator in the poem, in the poetry, where she worries about her husband because her husband was doing a lot of atrocities and has been outlawed, and because of that he was exiled. Her husband was exiled. She wanted to get her husband back. She was following her husband exilement, but with an unknown reason she was separated from her husband. She was separated from her husband by the husband's relatives, and so that she finds herself living in a remote and desolate place unhappily. She lost her happiness completely, and here she suffers her her own emotional torment and thinking of her husband, and she expects her husband to come back to her. The next poetry is Deor's Lament. Deor, or the Lament of Deor, D-E-O-R. And this poetry was written in late 10th century, approximately we would say 960 to 990. This poetry consists of the lament of the Skobdeer who gave his name to the poem. Okay, Skobdeer, who gave his name to the poem, which was given no formal title. So in those days, mostly writers, they used to keep their own name as a title for the poetry. However, most of the modern scholars, they don't believe that Dior to be the author of this poem. In this poem, Dior's Lord has replaced him. Dior mentions various figures from Germanic mythology and reconciles his own troubles with the troubles these figures faced, ending each section with a refrain that passed away so many this. This poem, which begins with the struggles and misfortunes of character named Wieland, Weland, and this poem consists of 42 alliterative lines. However, this poem may considerably older than the manuscript. So the next poetry is the husband's message. In this poetry, the husband who appeared in the poetry, he was driven out from the country. See, after his departure, his wife was staying alone. This fellow who landed in new land where he got a wealthy life, but there he got everything in his life, but he longs for his wife. He expects his wife to join him. He wants to live with his wife. He got everything in the new land, but he is not with his life. So now let's see a few religious works which were appeared in the Anglo-Saxon age. See, most of the religious poetry were flourished in the northern part of England throughout the 8th century. But most of the work survived only in West Saxon transcription of the late 10th century. Most of the poetries consist of retellings, books and episodes from the Old Testament. And most of the religious poetry is anonymous. Don't know who the authors for this poetry. But there are two poets' names are known. First one is Caedmon, 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 who lived in late 7th century and is the first English poet known by name, Caedmon. The second poet is Cynewulf, 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 who also lived late 8th century and of course early 9th century, who lived in late 8th century. One is Caedmon. So Caedmon, the first Old English Christian poet, who is fragmentary hymn to be the creation, remains a symbol of adaptation of the aristocratic heroic Anglo-Saxon verse tradition to expression of Christian themes. This poetry expressed the most of the Christian themes. See, unfortunately, Caedmon's only known surviving work is Caedmon's hymn, the 9-line alliterative vernacular which praise a poem in honor of God, which he supposedly learned to sing in his initial dream. The poem is one of the earliest attested examples of Old English. Caedmon, also called as Anglo-Saxon Milton, is an illiterate herdsman, shepherd. This fellow was retired from a company one night in shame because he couldn't comply with the demand made of each guest to sing. He couldn't sing he couldn't fulfill the expectation of the guest who have arrived. So that time he was embarrassed. Then in a dream a stranger appeared commanding him to sing. In his dream it's happening, the beginning of the things, and the headsman found himself uttering verses which he had never heard. So he is dreaming that somebody is making him to sing, and while he is sleeping, he was uttering few verses, strange lines. When Caedmon awoke, he related his dream to the farm bailiff under whom he worked, and was conducted by him to a monastery at Steenleschach. Now it's called Whitby. Streen slash STREANESHALH. Steenhalch. Now the name is called Whitby. The next poetry is Bede. Bede, Saint Bede the Venerable. So this work is best known, Saint Bede is best known for his ecclesiastical history of English people. Okay, the source vital to the history of the conversion to Christianity of Anglo-Saxon tribes. So Anglo-Saxon tribes converted to the Christianity, about which Saint Bede discussed. So the next poetry is Cynewulf, Cynewulf. So Cynewulf is known for his religious composition. Cynewulf, the poet who lived in Anglo-Saxon age, who is well known for his religious composition, and he is regarded as one of the preeminent figures of Anglo-Saxon Christian poetry. People knows his name by the means of runic signatures that are appeared in 4 of his poetries. So the first poet who put signature in his works, in his books. The first poet who put signature in his book, Cynewulf. So through which his names understood by the scholars. Now the next poetry in the religious poems, Dream of Rood. The major theme of the poem called the Dream of the Rood is the representation of the crucifixion as battle. See, both Christ and cross. Rood means cross. See, both Christ and the cross, they succeeded over defeat. And Jesus Christ was crucified. After that, Christ as well as cross, they got succeeded over defeat. They are seen as heroic. In the end of the poetry, both of them are worshipped because of what they signify. Both, even the cross and Christ, both of them were worshipped. So this is all about the important poetries which were appeared in the age of Anglo-Saxon. These are the poetries which were appeared in the age of Anglo-Saxons. That's it.